specialists of Reddit. What is a dead giveaway? Someone is faking his knowledge in your area? Not my current field, but myself being a veteran. This applies as I've seen it. Someone who was never in the military, but wants you to think they were will almost always tell you they were special forces. Someone who was actually any sort of spec ops will usually tell you they were a truck driver or a fuel specialist. I heard a former SEAL say that in an interview. The first clue that he was not actually a Navy SEAL is that he told you he was a Navy SEAL. When I was a lawyer, I did family law, divorces, child custody, etc. The real fun stuff, you know. In family law, in the counties I practiced in anyway, the parties are called petitioner and respondent. The moment someone, even attorney here or there, called them plaintiff or defendant, you knew they weren't familiar with this practice area. A slip up here or there is understandable, but when an attorney is constantly calling the parties by the wrong title, you knew they didn't know crap about family law. I've also worked in the aviation field for a long time with vintage World War II aircraft. Aircraft then, like military aircraft now, had names attached to the model. So you have the P-51 Mustang, B-25 Mitchell, B-17 Flying Fortress, etc. When they start referring to the B-17 as the Liberator or the P-51 as a Hellcat, you know pretty much everything else coming out of their mouth on this topic is utter BS. Anything gene related, especially when it comes to CRISPR. Yeah, I'll make my baby have a 315 IQ using CRISPR. The words "that's not fair" will never be spoken by any real lawyer. Fairness was tossed out the window and burned alive your first year of law school. At the very least say it's not in the interest of justice and/or equity. History. They give short answers to very complex questions without any qualifying remarks. Making difficult historical concepts simple is both the mark of a great historian and a terrible one. Essentially it's like two people have been assigned the job of assembling IKEA furniture. When they finish they both have leftover pieces. The good one lets you know there are leftover pieces that should probably get more attention. The bad one simply tosses them in the bin and hopes no one notices. Unfortunately, as every politician knows, the public generally prefers the latter. A lot of people try to use really niche medical terms when giving out awful advice here. I'm guessing it's to sound smart, but anyone in the field would simplify any explanation to ensure understanding. Also, don't take medical advice from people here. I read about someone putting foods in their hoo-ha. These people can't be trusted. People bring their pets in to see me sometimes after having learned to pronounce a complex disease process on the internet, or mispronouncing it. Then I get to explain it to them. No, your dog doesn't have tympanic bullous-steer dystrophy. It just doesn't listen to you because it's a craphead. Overkill with the buzzwords and acronyms. My industry unfortunately is full of them. We have to synergize backward overflow. I'd say if someone thinks the most dangerous part of flying is turbulence, icing, microbursts, wind shear, thunderstorms, controlled flight into terrain, etc., are all worse. You can have extreme turbulence, but it's less frequent than most of the other hazards I mentioned. Confirmed kills the large majority of soldiers who have actually killed the enemy. Don't talk about it. I was watching Formula 1 the other day and my new roommate told me F1 drivers always pull off the best drifts. I mean, they occasionally do, but it often ends with a car backwards and or in a wall. Chemistry. Some things just don't happen, like chlorine spontaneously evolving from chloride. And when people insist there is a small chance of something occurring when there is zero chance of it occurring, it is very obvious to someone who knows better. Feed that green mamba for me. If they don't get bit then they probably know what they're doing. If they tell me to frick off then they could still be an expert though. This is what I would do. I repair cell phones. I'd ask for a rundown of how to repair an HTC One 2 and what a fair price for the repair would be. The correct answer is frick that noise and replace the phone instead. It's not worth it. The phone is almost impossible to repair without destroying more than you fix. In mathematics, any document not written in LaTeX, referring to physics as a justification for a mathematical claim, especially when it is handworthy BS about quantum mechanics, relativity, or string theory, a tone of amazement or wonder when talking about something that is To a mathematician, extremely mundane, such as complex numbers. Also, referring to complex numbers as imaginary numbers. Claims of a proof of or solution to any of the Riemann hypothesis, P equals NP, the Collatz conjecture, squaring the circle, or Fermat's last theorem. Admittedly, there has been exactly one exception to this rule. When my idiot of a principal goes up to one of my students with autism and very sternly says, "Look at me," this is after he claimed to have extensive knowledge of autism and told us he considered himself to be on the spectrum because he has ADHD. He also insists on being called doctor. I hate the guy. Ask questions and make statements that sound relevant to everyone else who doesn't know how it should work. That's one of the managers at my manufacturing plant. He is very smart in some areas, but will not admit that he needs to learn how manufacturing works. Sees a graph and gets irritated at the number. Why don't you just do buzzword out there? Well, you see, explain basic manufacturing process and problems repeat every day. Trust me, I'm an engineer. I've had people tell me there's no difference in the skeletons of different ethnicities after claiming to have a relevant degree. Mate, it's like one of the first things you learn. You can tell with a high level of confidence what ethnicity someone was based on their teeth alone, for Christ's sake, let alone the skull. I'm an analytical chemist in pharmaceutical research. If anybody has advice on how I can sound like I do know what I'm talking about, I'd love to hear it. Computer programmer, although I suspect this transfers to any field. Feeling the need to explain fundamental or basic concepts which everyone else just assumes to be understood. If you launch into a lengthy explanation of any concept that even a fresh grad should be able to understand, that raises all kinds of red flags if you are meant to be even moderately experienced. Especially if this presented in a way that makes it appear that you believe that you are explaining something that others might not know. That suggests that this information is the frontier of your knowledge. Hipsters who've never farmed talking about grass-fed chicken. Chickens couldn't survive on a grass-fed diet. If you bragged to others about building your own computer, you're probably not some IT wizard. Good job, you assembled a Lego set for adults. When they don't know the difference between the different series of aluminum alloys or stainless steel alloys and other metals and such. When they switch to sniper when we already have 3 and no medic on offense. They talk too much about a specific topic when a few words are all that's required. I'm not a specialist, just a psych grad student, but I've noticed something that differentiates an expert from a self-acclaimed guru. Someone who is faking one's knowledge in psychology will give clean-cut, direct, black and white answers about human behavior. Subject matter experts' answers will be extremely convoluted because they know that research findings are contradictory and require replications and meta-analytic reviews. They also know that research findings can only be generalized to a certain extent, that each theory or model has its own bunch of criticisms, and that research findings must be interpreted with caution. Typical subject matter expert responses will be, "Oh, it depends," or "research findings are inconclusive." For example, I vividly remember someone asking a self-help guru about the role of touch in relationships, and he simply said, "Women need touch more than men." The following is a researcher's answer to the same question. Gender differences in touch are dependent on many interacting factors such as who initiates the touch, who receives the touch, the situation in which the touching occurs, why the touching occurs, and how long the touch lasts. She then went on to explain how each of these factors influence gender differences in touch. For example, men and women touch equally after a positive event, but women touch each other more than men after a negative event. They regurgitate common facts that appear all of the time in poorly researched web articles or old wives' tales. Grizzly bears can't climb trees. If a bear sees you, you should play dead. Crap like that. Not knowing which way round an incontinence pad, adult-sized diapers for the people I work with, goes. Thinking that they can punish someone for bad behavior, this is actually abuse. Not knowing about dolls, deprivation of liberty safeguarding, or the Mental Capacity Act. Most people I work with, apart from management, couldn't go in depth into the legal aspects, but will be able to give you a pretty good overview. People who talk about how tannins give them headaches. People who say if it says reserve or cuvee or select on the bottle then it's better quality won't give them a headache. People who want sulfite-free wine rather than no added sulfites. People who turn their nose up at screw tops. People who think Burgundy, or Bordeaux or Chianti, is a type of grape. People who think you can't get a good bottle for $12. People who think Merlot sucks. My grandmother bought wine without tannins to one of my uncles for his birthday and didn't show the bottle to him. When she gave him a glass of said wine and he tasted it, he claimed he could taste the tannins and my grandmother just played along. It's not the voltage that's dangerous, it's the amps. When lawyers say they major in international law, they don't know the military lingo. But I got all my lingo from Call of Duty. Not my current field but something I have a lot of background in. Basically when people claim to be all about conservation and being eco-friendly, etc. Anything in that ballpark really. It's really easy to tell because they'll say something that sounds legit to the public, but is ridiculous to any actual conservationist. For example, I did some work with sea turtles. Some species of sea turtles have mass nesting events on one single beach. The mass nesting lasts about a week. At one point, locals were poaching so badly that we weren't sure the population would be recovered. It's not where it used to be, but it's way better than it was. They lay so many eggs that the nests created earlier in the week end up getting destroyed. That being said, the WWF made an agreement with the locals. As long as they don't poach, they can collect the eggs early in the week that would normally just get destroyed. Not long ago, the internet caught wind of this. People were spewing complete nonsense about how wrong this is to be allowing locals to eat turtle eggs, etc. Basically, you can tell when someone doesn't know a dang thing about conservation when they say stuff like that. Conservationists try to compromise more than anything. This is also why hunting is okay as long as you have the proper permits, etc. I'm a civil engineer. Anyone telling you that the WTC tower collapses were controlled demolitions is not the physics, engineering, or architectural genius PhD whatever they are claiming, nor are they representing any. This crap's basic stuff that anyone who made it through a course of study would know and not be surprised by. The list of architects and engineers for 9/11 truth hasn't really grown in numbers since 2008 when I first checked it, so that's also a huge red flag. I actually had a nuclear physicist claim that I was trying to blind him with science when I critiqued his research paper on the subject. I crap you not. The paper featured bad high school, that is, Newtonian, physics to claim the towers should have tipped over like trees. So, definitely not an actual physicist of any sort, because a physicist would know about advances in physics beyond the 17th century. Anyone who gives you any sort of definite answer is not a lawyer. If someone refuses to 100% commit to something basic, they may be a lawyer. If you ask someone if the 24-hour Walmart is open, and they say probably, they might be a lawyer. Buddy back in high school kept insisting that my sedan could drift better than his Mustang because my cars are forward. If by drift he meant understeer. Computer security. If anyone claims they know everything they need to know, they are dumb as crap. The smartest people I've worked with are the first to admit they don't know much about this topic. It's truly a cat and mouse game with criminals, so it's pretty difficult to claim you know everything that you need to know. For example, one of my co-workers got his PhD from FSU in cryptology, and even he claims that he doesn't deserve a PhD in the subject because it's evolving so fast that things that he studied 5 years ago are out of date. You have been visited by the cook dog comment, without food there is no paradise, so that you never burn the stakes. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.